Wait, you have a TV?
No. I just like to read the TV guide. Read the TV guide. You don't need a TV.
Television addict! Television addict! Television addict!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to TV Guidance Counselor. As always, I am Ken Reed, your TV Guidance Counselor, here to talk about classic television using back issues of TV Guide magazine as the gateway into our collective past. And as we barrel into October, my favorite month of the year, despite the global pandemic and how time has no meaning anymore, we get a little Halloween-y here with my guest, Kat Baab-Muguira. She has just written her first book, which is called Poe for Your Problems, Uncommon Advice from History's Least Likely Self-Help Guru. It just came out on Running Press. It's really great. I recommend you pick it up. It's good to read at any time of the year, but especially now. And Kat was super fun to talk to. This was a really fun episode. We talk about Halloween week 1996, which is 25 years ago. If I did the math right, 25 years ago this month. So that is insane to me. Although if you're listening and you're like 21 years old, it was before you were born. But I don't have time to get into that kind of depressing talk. Depressing for me. I have a guest to discuss Edgar Allan Poe with. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's episode of TV Guidance Counselor with my guest, Kat Baab-Muguira.
TV is my friend, and it has been always there for me in time of need.
Live via satellite from the Mid-Atlantic. Kat, how are you?
I'm doing great. Nice to be here.
Is that the Mid-Atlantic? Did I get that right?
I think so. Yeah. I'm in Richmond, Virginia,
Right.
so.
All I know of Richmond, Virginia is there was a punk band we used to play with called Avail that was from Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, yeah. All the cool kids used to have Avail stickers on their guitar cases, backpacks, and such.
Yeah.
I never had one, but I wasn't cool. So.
There's still time. I mean, just get yourself a backpack and a guitar case.
Maybe I'll put it on the baby bag, so.
Yes. Get the baby a little guitar and you're very good.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Virginia.
Yeah, I did. I'm from South Carolina originally, and then my family moved here when I was pretty little, so.
So Richmond's not like on the DC side. That's on it's on the other side of the state.
It's almost a DC suburb now because Northern Virginia keeps coming down 95.
Right.
So even without light rail or whatever, they're joining. But yeah, years ago, it used to be a separate place.
So your new book is not quite about Edgar Allan Poe. I would say it's sort of Edgar Allan Poe adjacent.
Liberties.
Yes.
Yeah, Poe adjacent. That's great.
But it's Maryland, of course, is I think where he died, right?
He did, but he spent most of he spent his boyhood and young manhood because he came back here for a job. So Richmond claims him, and I think theirs is the most legit claim because wherever you went to high school, it's your psychic prison, and right. That's really in your mind where you return to. So not just ashamed moments, but plenty of them. So
there's a local connection and a psychic prison connection for you with the high school connection.
It's my psychic prison, too, which is maybe why I love Poe so much. But yeah, he's technically a hometown boy, I think.
Because Boston lays claim to him as well up here, which is strange.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the Mid-Atlantic, or I don't know, is Boston the Mid-Atlantic? But a lot of cities claim Poe. You have Philadelphia has a pretty legitimate claim. Charleston even claims him because he was there when he was stationed in the Army. Baltimore, obviously. He lived in New York for a good bit, so. I
think drunken lunatics of note left a lot of imprints in many cities at that time.
Yeah, I think there's a Wikipedia page for that.
Yeah, and we always claim H.P. Lovecraft in Providence, who is a very strange man who never, ever left Providence. So, or
his house, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't he an agoraphobe or something?
Yeah, and he wrote, I think, the first critical analysis of Edgar Allan Poe, first nonfiction critical analysis. So he was like a huge scholar of Poe, which is interesting to me because one of the things that I talked about when we first started talking about doing this was it's funny how Poe is sort of the groundwork for way more modern shows than people would ever think.
Yeah, James Wood said about Flaubert that his influence is so vast as to be almost invisible. And I think it's the same deal with Poe. The Washington Post just called him the most influential American writer ever. I think that's legit. And there's almost no horror, goth, mystery, media out there that he hasn't touched in some way.
Yeah, like the police procedural or like murder mysteries. That's all like complete, almost no change to the structure from things he wrote 200 years ago.
And down to the fact that the orangutan always did it.
Yes,
so.
It's always an orangutan, that's why I stopped watching CSI, to be honest with you. I was like, every time, come on, this is ridiculous.
And on the SUVU, that's where it gets kind of gross.
Yes, it really does. So we picked a week here appropriately. This is Halloween week, 1996, I believe, October 26th to November 1st. So I presume you're a fellow horror kid.
Yeah, a bit of one. I was about 15 when this was the TV guide of the week. So a lot of times I was sneaking into a room, like when my parents were out of their bedroom, that's where the second TV was. I'd turn on The Shining for a few minutes with the sound down low, ready to bolt. So
were your parents very strict about what you watched?
Extremely so. So I didn't see Flashdance as one of my choices for later in the week, not to spoil things, but I didn't see that until I was about 32. So.
That seems like the wrong time to see that, but we can dissect that when we get there.
Excellent.
Did you have cable?
We did eventually, but we never had HBO or Skinamax or whatever because, for obvious reasons.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's Skinamax. I asked because, so the cover here, oddly, even though it's Halloween week, they're really leaning into this being a parent's guide to kids' TV. And we're about 3 years, I think, into the Nicktoons. It's the Rugrats on the cover. And then the first page, we got a big 2-page spread of TV for kids just in the nick of time with Hey Arnold and Alex Mack and Blam and Keenan and Kel and sort of all these this is sort of the birth of the tween, which you and I think are almost the same age, and we just missed tweens being a thing.
Yeah, which is the shame because I could have used more dignity, like some kind of claim at that stage, and I just never got it. Yeah,
it's like you either seem like an immature teen or like an old child.
I think it's an important innovation between.
Yeah, even though it's probably strictly just to make money, but I'll give it a shot. I'll give it some credit for being a good thing.
Yeah, you're right. Probably Disney invented it to sell things.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, once they started being able to see who watched what in like 15-minute increments, and they're like, look, teenage girls have a ton of money. I don't know why. They buy things. And before we get to the listings here, there's one thing I don't want to mention, just because Mystery Science Theater 3000 comes up on the show often. There's a little article in here about Trace Ballou leaving the show, and he's replaced by Mary Jo Pehl. Both of them have been on, but this was sort of the last season of that show with Dr. Forrester, and it's funny because think of that as a cult show, but it's a fairly big article on like the 3rd page of the TV guide with this news. Just kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Were you a big reader as a kid?
I was, totally unsurprisingly. A lot of Poe in elementary school, a lot of novels for kids. I wasn't a huge mystery or violence buff. A lot of it was like Sweet Valley High. Do you know what that is?
Of course.
Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know if men were exposed to it, at least how I was.
But I am not like other people.
You like a violet cover with some twin blondes.
That's right.
In California.
That's right.
Which, who doesn't?
Yeah. I didn't watch the show, though. I was not super into the show.
It wasn't as good. It was a little bit of a disappointment, though. The fact that they could find some identical twins that looked even remotely like the characters was kind of a win.
Yeah, and that was the kind of thing where you watched that show for 5 minutes just on the novelty before you start to realize it's really bad.
Yeah, like it's almost better that an idea that passed away rather than you witnessing it.
What a scathing review.
I'm sorry, Brittany and Cynthia. I think that was the name of the twins.
Yes. And I asked too, because a lot of kids that I know that grew up with pretty strict parents, especially ones who, around viewing and who had a sort of an interest in horror or sort of a little bit at least. One of the things the sort of loophole a lot of them found were like novelizations of movies.
Oh, I wasn't that smart apparently. Though I do remember I snuck R.L. Stein novels. And whoever the guy who wrote the kind of sexier version
Christopher
for
Pike?
middle schoolers.
Was that it?
Exactly, yeah. I remember, a lot of stuff about cheerleaders in those, some of which went straight over my head. But yeah, those were pretty thrilling in 6th grade.
That was as racy as one could get with a scholastic book club.
Yeah. And I think they had, painted nails or something on the cover. Practically see them.
Because there's a big article in here about Goosebumps, which again, I think was probably too young for us.
Yeah, I don't think I remember that one.
No, I remember kids younger than me reading it and feeling like I missed out a little bit because I was like, oh, when I was 12, I would have liked a series of horror books and a TV show.
Absolutely.
But it was like, but I'm not going to read it now. It's for babies. It certainly is. So let's dive into the, and I do want to say that the number one kids show they list is Superman the Animated Series, which is an incredible show. It's the same team that made Batman the Animated Series, but it was kind of overshadowed by that. And it's really smart and very well done. And as a huge comic book fan, it actually fixes a ton of comic problems with the continuity.
Okay.
And it's just really, really well done. And I would like people to rediscover it.
Yeah, I remember that Batman show. I saw an episode lately just randomly walking through the living room when my nephew had it on. And I was like, wow, this is incredibly well done.
Oh, it's amazing. It's very dark. It's super like German expressionist.
Yeah.
And it doesn't talk down to kids. It's just like, it's just the show. It's not sort of, it's a rare cartoon in the 80s and 90s that wasn't just trying to sell toys.
Mm-hmm. Or cereal.
Yes, which is always difficult. But I forget, there's actually some pretty good kids shows in 96. Kablam was a really weird show MTV had, MTV Nickelodeon. And there's some sort of weird, sort of experimental kind of cool things that we didn't quite have. And then obviously a huge article about Mr. Rogers, who may be the greatest human to ever live on the planet.
Yeah, we're all diminished by his death.
Yeah. There's that footage of him testifying before Congress. Have you ever seen that?
I don't think I have. What was he testifying about?
It was about funding for PBS. So this was in I want to say the either late 60s or early 70s. And he's just really good and compelling. And there's this like super ridiculously cartoonish Southern Republican guy who's the chairman of this. Like, he's like Foghorn Leghorn. Like, this guy's literally like, I'll say. Like, he's like almost Colonel Sanders is running this hearing. And then he goes, he has the weirdest quote. He goes, I'll tell you, Rogers, I'm supposed to be some kind of a tough guy, but you just gave me goosebumps. It's the weirdest comment. And even Fred Rogers is like, yeah, okay.
It sounds like a come on at this distance.
It really does. It really does. That may be what he was going for, but Fred wasn't picking that up.
Well, more to his credit.
That's true. Do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a ton in fitting with in keeping with the Christian family in the 90s theme. I have 4 younger brothers and 2 older sisters. I'm actually just coming from a week at the beach with all of them.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing because I was sneaking away from like the family spades game to read this TV guide from 96. God, don't bother me. I haven't seen you in 2 years. I need to read this thing. It's like daylight savings for your youth.
Yeah, if you had let me do it then, I wouldn't have to do it now.
I mean, in the dark, reading it, the only thing missing was a flashlight.
So were you sort of either the victim of or the benefactor of the taste of your older siblings? Did they introduce you to cool stuff, or was it kind of like everyone on their own?
My eldest sister had Depeche Mode tapes that I would listen to. And so she had, and The Cure. So she brought that stuff around when I was a little kid, which was cool. And then my other sister had pretty good taste in clothes. Like she was in on trends. So like when suspenders were in for 2 weeks, I was able to pull that off too. Well, I don't know about pull it off, but participate.
Right.
So yeah, all in all, it was a major benefit to have both of them. I probably did better overall socially and whatnot. You know, my older sister would give me a ride to school in high school when that's such a thing. Like So
older
yeah,
sister dropping you off is always cooler than parents dropping you off.
For sure. So
did you sort of make your younger siblings like watch or listen to or read things you liked?
Yeah, when I came home from college, I would play, you know, new music that I was into for my brothers. I remember playing them like Black Heart Procession and Leonard Cohen and all sorts. So exposing them to it a bit. And now my brother and I still go to see shows together. He's a Catholic priest now.
Wow.
So it's always, you get such great treatment in bars. You wouldn't believe it. So anyway, we go to shows together to this day, which is a lot of fun.
Oh, cool. All right. So you're experiencing things even though you wouldn't necessarily get to all sit around and watch TV at a given time.
Yeah. We managed to sneak it in at the periphery. So we weren't, you know, not full on like you see on these television shows where it's like 17 kids and they're all in pilgrim dresses or whatever. Right. It wasn't quite like that. Like we went to public school. Probably because my parents couldn't afford private school.
Well, it's either the dresses or the school. You know, it's
yeah, you can't do both. It's not in the budget.
All that denim is expensive.
True. And the yarn for your hair.
Yep. I mean, gingham doesn't grow on trees these days. So let's dive in. Saturday night, what'd you go with?
Oh, let me see. Pulling out my list here. Oh, okay. So I saw that HBO has Vampire in Brooklyn on at 8 p.m. And also they had Backdraft on Showtime, which I still have never seen because of my deprived childhood. So I would watch either of those, maybe flipping back and forth. Is that a legitimate response?
Yeah, you might get confused in the plots of those two films, which is kind of great, though. I think mashing up those movies is fantastic.
A vampire Eddie Murphy saving a kid from a burning building. I think it just improves things. Yeah,
I mean, all right, we just made $1 million, you and I. It's vampire firemen, right? Like,
how has this not been done?
They can work at night. They're somewhat invulnerable. You know,
they live in a firehouse and have like hijinks.
Yeah, it's perfect. I'm seeing a vampire sliding down a fire pole, and immediately I'm like, take my money.
Yeah. Let me give you $12. I'm chasing you down the street.
Yes, give it. Vampire in Brooklyn is not the greatest movie. It's John Landis. It's a horror comedy. It's sort of an attempt to recapture the magic of an American Werewolf in London. It's notorious because it's the second time John Landis directed a movie where a stunt person was killed, which he got a bit of a reputation for sort of recklessness, and that sort of overshadowed the whole movie. And it was a huge flop. It almost single-handedly killed Eddie Murphy's career until Nutty Professor, I think, brought it back, or maybe Boomerang. But it's interesting. It's not my favorite vampire movie. I talk about Backdraft a lot because that movie was enormous. If you and nobody ever mentions it.
How did it sink so completely out of our consciousness? I don't understand.
I don't know. It was as big as Jurassic Park or T2 or any of those. It was massive. And then no one's ever oh yeah, Backdraft's my favorite movie. No one ever brings it up. Ever.
You'd think there'd be a generation of people who became firefighters because of that movie. Where are they? Why aren't they vocal? I
have no idea. That's just nuts. It's one of, there's certain pieces of, especially the 90s, pop culture phenomenons that just totally immediately sank like Dangerous Minds.
I saw the profile of Larissa Olenek. I think I'm saying that right.
Yes.
Where is she now?
Yeah, she pops up in stuff every now and then, but she kind of quit acting. But yeah, she was, 10 Things I Hate About You was massive.
Right.
And then she was just kind of I'm done.
She's probably rolling in a pool of money right now, so.
That's true. The Scrooge McDuck style. I think those are good choices. I cannot fault them. I've seen both those movies. There is a thing on that I am sort of proudly ashamed to admit I 100% would watch that night. And since it's odd that it's on because it's October, but it is on MTV. It's not just the MTV Beach House. It's the MTV Baywatch Beach House, a special edition of the Beach House all about Baywatch.
Shit. Taking it up to 11.
Yes, that is a good use of time as well. They're really cramming two great things in that little half hour.
Yeah, this should have come to my attention. I should have watched this.
But I mean, you don't want to start too hot. You got to ease into this stuff. You'd go into shock.
Yeah, you're right. You can't come back from that. You can't top it. So,
have you ever seen Baywatch?
I have. Yeah, I mean, I can see someone sprinting down a beach in my mind right now.
David Hasselhoff singing.
Yeah, before he was just a totally different person in my mind before the whole floor burger thing. And I don't mean to make fun of addiction. That really changed a lot of people's perceptions.
It's true. It's 100% true. Even his own.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch any of the Poe adaptions, like any of the Roger Corman stuff from the 60s or any of the movies?
I've seen a good bit of those, and I've seen, to my mind, the more interesting ones are the European adaptations, which just go in these batshit directions with, and suddenly here's Brigitte Bardot playing a role, and it doesn't make any sense, but you keep watching.
Yeah, I mean, they knew how to do it then. You get a recognizable title from a book, and then that's all you need, really. Yeah,
and then there's like some softcore. They're not even that soft in some of these. So.
Yes,
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Like I love Tomb of Ligeia, which is maybe my favorite of the Corman ones, and that really isn't the greatest adaptation of that story, but it's still good.
Yeah, I'll watch those anytime. I didn't see any come up in the TV guide. Did I miss any?
No, it's not. I thought of it because there's a movie called Black Sunday on Saturday night. Ironically, or not ironically, confusingly, and it's not the Black Sunday I wanted it to be. There's a 1962 Mario Bava Italian horror film called Black Sunday, which is very Poe inspired and is really great. But this is the 1977 John Frankenheimer movie Black Sunday about a murderous sniper at a football game.
Oh, well, not relevant.
No, not as that exciting. So Sunday night, the day of the Lord. Were you?
Yes.
Was this like church all day, or were you like allowed to do stuff?
We weren't allowed to eat for an hour before Mass, which is kind of an old school thing that I didn't see a lot of other people observe. And then Mass at 5, and occasionally, we'd get McDonald's afterwards if we'd been good or something. But it didn't take up the whole day. It wasn't like we were on our on mealers the entire time. So hopefully I would have been home to watch. My choice was My Bloody Valentine. I've never actually seen this, but I read the IMDb and it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's a great movie. It's one of the best of the early 80s slashers. And actually the remake from 2004, I think, is actually very good as well. It's definitely, I think it takes place in like rural Pennsylvania. And so they shot it on location, and it ends up, this will sound like a ridiculous thing to say about a slasher movie called My Bloody Valentine, but it's actually a really cool allegory about the loss of the mining industry in America.
Oh, I saw the original. The Canadian version had been filmed in like actual Nova Scotian defunct mines.
Mm-hmm. And it shows. Like the atmosphere in that movie is really unique. It's very weird.
You have to think the lighting challenge of that was unreal. Like, I don't even...
Oh, yeah. Or even just like, that can't be safe.
No. You're right.
The only thing less safe than mines are abandoned mines.
It's amazing someone didn't break a leg and die at the bottom of one.
Yeah, and that's why indie movies did those things, because they could shoot there for very cheap. But you passed up the Simpsons Treehouse of Horror. Were you not a Simpsons person?
No, it's just that's not my favorite year for this. I think the Poe year has to be my favorite. Though this is the one Bart finds his twin in the attic. That's really good. And also, I mean, there's a little William Wilson touch there, so...
It's funny. Another thing that a lot of people I know who were drawn to horror stuff but couldn't necessarily watch it. A lot of them learned so many of those stories from The Simpsons by way of parody.
Yeah, that you saw the parodies before. There's still parodies on Family Guy I haven't seen the original material for.
You are not alone there. I think there's only one person who's seen all of them. And the weirdest thing about that show is it's so, sometimes the references are so specifically Rhode Island.
Mm.
And I used to spend every summer there as a kid, so I'll be like,
Okay.
I think there's like 6 people who understood that joke.
I didn't realize like Rhode Island humor is a school of humor. I didn't know that there was enough material there, but apparently.
Rhode Island's the smallest state with the most weird quirks. There's like they call milkshakes there a cabinet.
I'm stumped by this. How did that happen?
Because it would be all the ingredients were stuff you would get out of the cabinet, I guess.
Even the ice cream?
I suppose. I don't know, but that's like universally what they call it. They have quahogs, which are their own kind of clam that they only have in Rhode Island. There's all kinds of weird regional foods. There's a thing that's only in Rhode Island called New York System hot dogs that has nothing to do with New York. And it's like this specific meat sauce hot dogs that they only have in Rhode Island. And like everyone there knows about it.
That's the system, the meat sauce?
Yes. And when I was growing up, if you ordered pizza in Rhode Island, they would give you square, room temperature pizza with no melted cheese. It would just have tomato sauce and a little sprinkled like Parmesan cheese. And that was pizza.
How did you react when you actually had pizza for the first time?
Oh, you're like, this is amazing. I remember we ordered that once and they gave it to my dad and he was like, what the fuck is this? Like, they're messing
Right,
with
as you should.
Yeah. But now if you go there and you want that, you have to order pizza strips, or they call it a party pizza.
Pizza strips. Like, it sounds like something you're going to dunk in syrup out of the freezer.
Yeah, it's really bad. Like, we don't have pizza, we got pizza strips. But yeah, so it's, very strange. There's also a cool Halloween thing on this night that is, because we're on the 27th of October. And this is sadly hosted by Ron Silver, who's kind of a piece of garbage. But in this thing, it is a series of made-for-cable movies based on kids' horror books by someone called J.R. Black, who I've never heard of. And this, again, this is not anything that I've seen like any sort of nostalgia for, but it's Shadow Zone, The Undead Express.
Oh.
And this particular one has a cameo by Wes Craven in it.
This is getting better and better.
This film is introduced by the Reaper, a cemetery-dwelling spooksperson who explains that the Shadow Zone is a netherworld where people encounter, quote, the fiends that live in their worst nightmares. For a teen named Zach, the Shadow Zone turns out to be New York's cavernous subway tunnels, where he meets a vampire called Valentine, played by Ron Silver, and finds himself up to his neck in ravenous bloodsuckers.
Wow.
And aimed at kids on Showtime. It was this sort of horror film series. No recollection of it. I'm kind of intrigued.
Yeah, I would. I'm writing it down to watch it later.
The Undead Express. Also, X-Files was on that night. This is when it first moved to Sundays, right before it got kind of bad. And Sunday night was always traditionally the rip from the headlines made for TV movie night.
Love it.
This one is called The Secret She Carried on NBC.
I saw the ad.
Oh, God, this ad is brutal. It says, he raped her. Now he's come back for, quote unquote, his baby.
His baby.
And I don't know who would want to watch that.
No, I mean, honestly, like, even from the first line, I'm like, this sounds sad.
Strangest thing in the ad, I don't know if you have it up there, but if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of that ad, if you could read that for the listeners, I think they'll be very... This is The Secret She Carried.
Featuring the song Fields of Gold by Sting.
Why is that on that ad?
I don't know.
Why? First of all, what does that have to do with this movie?
Because rape, illegitimate rape children, you think Fields of Gold.
Like, is there anyone who was on the fence and then was like, Fields of Gold by Sting is in it. I'll watch it.
Yeah, I turned the tide.
So I wonder if that was just Sting was like, all right, you can use my song,
Yeah.
but I want feature. It's a strange time. Monday, what'd you do?
Let's see. Okay, this was a big treat for me, like when I could find an empty room with a TV in it at Melrose Place. So I saw maybe every third episode over a period of years. There was no continuity. It was just people sleeping with each other and occasionally faking cancer and, stabbing each other in the back and whatnot. So it worked, at least enough for teenage me.
It might have worked even better by only watching every third episode.
Yeah, you miss a lot of the early, like, Jake stuff. And it took a while to find the footing for his character, so.
Yeah, before they really leaned into the insanity, that show was a little bit boring.
Yeah, that's true. I remember, like, the one character ends up in a Mexican bordello because,
as you do.
I don't know, you double cross someone, then you wake up there, so.
Yeah, we all were seniors in high school once. This episode is she's been stalking her ex-lover. Tonight, Jane finally goes too far. And then it doesn't tell you what. It says when she...
This ad worked on me, though. I'm like, racking my brain trying to remember what happened. So well done on the ad copywriter.
I love how blunt this ad is because then it says Melrose Place. You want to know. You have to watch.
I do, frankly. Yes.
Yeah, they know it. They're just like, you want to watch it. I was never a huge Melrose Place fan, and I feel like I missed out because everything I've seen is just absolute insanity. And it kind of knew it.
I mean, fair enough. It seemed very glamorous to me back in the day, like the clothes, the haircuts, the fact that, people wear, it doesn't, there's a male and female roommate in the first season. I don't think that continues very long, but that was like scandalous and shocking to me.
Right.
Didn't realize that could even be a thing. So anyway, it opened doors for me.
You've been to LA, right?
Yeah, I lived there for about a year in 2019. I was out there trying to sell awful Lifetime movies, awful on purpose, hopefully, because I just love the genre so much.
I know it's a little too late, but what might have helped is if you could have got Sting to let you feature a song.
It's so obvious in retrospect.
But when you went out there, were you like, this is exactly like Melrose Place? Or like, were you like, well, I can't believe how much this is like whatever?
I felt cooler because we were in West Hollywood, not that far from the actual Melrose Place. And I occasionally would go to shows along La Cienega there, I think it is. I'm bad at street names. Oh, did you live in LA too? I
spent a lot of time there before in teen. I'd be out there usually most of October and March and doing shows and all kinds of stuff. But for those of us that have an interest in this, in sort of entertainment and movies and television and grew up nowhere near any of that stuff, it's always interesting when you first go out there because it's very familiar, like unusually familiar for a place you've never been. But also you kind of compare it to, I'm always curious to hear people's thoughts on what it compared to or didn't.
I think it's like the most underrated city in America. I absolutely love, it's not, everyone knows LA has horrendous problems too, but just for running into quirky people and everyone's kind of like on some hustle. I loved hanging around with a bunch of like B and C movie people who are very convinced of their importance nevertheless. So yeah, it was a blast. I would recommend it to anyone. I think high school classes should go to LA instead of DC so they can understand how the sausage gets made and the fact that it is sausage at all, you know?
Totally. I missed the DC trip. My parents wouldn't let me go. But I feel like I didn't miss out.
Had you done something wrong, or was it just...
No, I think we had to pay like pony up like $150 each or something like that.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're not paying that. So it was me and two other kids weren't allowed to go. And this is horrible. But so they made us spend the week in the special education class because those kids didn't go. And so they basically told us they were going to do a week of something called environmental camp.
Okay.
So we didn't feel as bad, but it just meant we walked one day to like this park near the high school and then just sat there all day.
It sounds a little bit like a punishment for that. Like they were shaking you down, actually, the $150.
Yeah, oh,
They're
totally.
best.
Totally. And that's when I discovered Skunk Cabbage.
What is that?
Oh my God, it's like this.
It sounds like a weed strain.
It could be, but it's like they're these things that look like cabbages and they grow mostly underground, but they have like a little teeny, it looks like a tulip that hasn't bloomed sticking out of the ground. And if you break that, it smells like a skunk, like full blast skunk. So kids were like snapping them off and kicking them at each other. And it was just, they're like skunk landmines.
You know how you'd run around, like put things down people's shirts, you know?
Yeah.
I can see it now.
We had, do you know, I think it's sodium chloride, but if it hits water, it bursts into flames. So it has to be kept in oil. It's like some kind of, so we had some of that in our, one of the science labs, and a kid stole a brick of it, like a full-on brick of it. And we had a little pond across from the high school, and the kid threw it into the pond, and it was a massive explosion, like enormous.
It feels like this should be in one of these movies that we're watching this week.
Yeah. I mean, it was, there was a lot.
Maybe Backdraft.
Backdraft. If we had a vampire fireman, he could have gone right in and stopped that, which would have been great. Yeah, there was a lot of shenanigans in my high school. So that's your whole Monday. You're watching that all night.
Yeah. Oh, I had at 9 p.m. Her Costly Affair, a TV movie that I wish I had seen. Brian Austin Green plays like a young stalker. And I saw the tagline for this movie was so incredible. It was like, to seduce his teacher, he'll do anything, even sleep with her daughter. Like, that's a natural next step.
Right. And also, like, a teenage boy is going to sleep with someone's daughter. Like, that's a shock. Right.
As opposed to his 43-year-old professor who just looks concerned in the stills.
A deadly twist to student-teacher relations. This is when Brian Austin Green, or as we call him here on the show, the Bag, it was really trying to break out of that 90210 white rapper thing that he had going on, and he was trying to do a lot of like these sort of adult sort of thriller type roles. It didn't take.
Wow. I just feel bad for him that this looked like the better alternative.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't want to be Joey Lawrence, but you know what? Probably should have. I think it would have worked out better for him. Bonnie Bedelia plays the teacher in question. This was a huge thing in that time, though. We had like what's her name, Smith. There was like 3 or 4.
Mary Kay Letourneau, wasn't she the teacher who had, not to joke too hard about someone with a 14-year-old, but I think he was very young. She was maybe a middle school teacher.
Yeah, and she's the one who had him like kill her husband. Like there was a couple of those.
I know they have kids together. I think they've eventually gotten divorced, but after she got out of jail, I'm pretty sure they got married, had a couple more kids because she was pregnant in jail, like and during the trial. It is as messy goes, it seems like.
Yeah, that is ripe for TV movie stuff right there. Do you have a favorite of those Lifetime movies?
Oh, anything with Tori Spelling. She's amazing in all of them. I think I'm pretty easy. I like anyone about a nanny, like any kind of nanny gone wrong scenario. I'm up for murderous nannies, jealous nannies, nannies stealing husbands. It's all good for me.
There's it's not a TV movie, but it's an amazingly bad horror movie called The Guardian. And it's based on a book by William Friedkin, who directed The Exorcist, directed The Exorcist. And it's literally about a pagan tree goddess who takes the form of an evil nanny to terrorize this family for no apparent reason. And she's like a sentient tree. Like they go out of their way in this movie to emphasize that she's a plant.
That just ups the terror level. But she's also a tree.
She's also a tree. Go with me on this. Also, she's a tree. Yeah, I saw that movie in the theater, and I must have been 11, and I had seen everything on Earth, and I was like, what the hell is this? What is this that I'm watching right now?
I feel like I need to add this to my list too.
I
haven't seen the Nanny Tree crossover.
Yeah, I would love for you to see The Guardian and to hear what you think of that film, because it is that movie needs a cult audience in 2021. Tuesday, what'd you do?
Alex Mack at 8 p.m. I did really like that show. This is one I probably would have seen. I saw most of those episodes. And then I also See No Evil, Hear No Evil caught my eye, which I never actually saw either. And it sounds kind of offensive, maybe.
This is the comedy with Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
One
Pryor
of them is deaf.
blind. Yeah.
One of them's
Wilder
blind.
is... Right.
Yeah. It's sort of Mr. Magoo-ish.
Yeah. They were trying to be sensitive, says the IMDb page. And I guess in 90s or 80s style, they would have been relatively more so. But,
yeah, I mean, if they weren't blind and deaf jokes, they would have been black and white jokes.
Right.
Like in the other Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor movies. Alex Mack is, that's another show that I am shocked they haven't rebooted and was kind of ahead of its time.
Yes.
That like,
I wonder if there's something funny with the IP or something, because you would think it would be back.
Totally. Like a teenage girl with superhuman powers that reflect the insecurities of teenage girls.
Yeah, and her beanie game was unreal.
Oh.
I tried to pull off beanies for years because of that, and it never suited me. But
you never encountered toxic waste. That's the problem. That was actually one of her superpowers.
Yeah, that's what was going wrong. I wish I'd known.
Yep. If you had only been in an industrial accident, you could have pulled off beanies.
I'm slapping my forehead. I don't know if you can see it.
So this is the night before Halloween. I think it's October 29th. So there's a big Doritos Fox Halloween Horror Nights special about Goosebumps. And the worst season of Roseanne, the final season where Roseanne attempted to make the show absolutely fabulous, which is a whole thing. So she bought the US remake rights to Absolutely Fabulous, and nobody wanted to buy it. So she just made Roseanne into Absolutely Fabulous and had them win the lottery. And
Yeah, they won like $108 million or something.
yeah, she was like, well, I'll just do it with my show. And so this episode is the Halloween episode, and Jennifer Saunders and Joanna Lumley actually guest star as Patsy and Adina in this episode.
Is there a Halloween component or?
Yes,
That's
sort of. So it's actually called Satan Darling, this episode. And they go to a Halloween party, and it's really bad, but it's worth watching for the just craziness of it.
It seems like a missed opportunity not to have either an evil nanny or a sentient tree, but
I mean,
I'd watch it.
what isn't though? There's another made-for-TV movie, a CBS Halloween movie inspired by actual events, it says. The Uninvited with Sharon Lawrence and Beau Bridges.
What's the plot?
This is the tagline, which tells you nothing. Like to the point where I don't even know if the person who wrote this saw this movie. It says, in a small town, on a peaceful street, in a quiet house, terror is about to come home.
Yeah, that tells you absolutely nothing.
So in the write-up, it says, after bearing a stillborn child, a woman experiences supernatural phenomenon, is convinced that the idyllic new house is haunted, but her husband suspects she's having a nervous breakdown.
Is this end with like drownings in bathtubs or something? Like,
I don't know.
What's the angle here? Like the rip from the headlines part.
Yeah, is this like, I don't get the inspired by actual events. Like, well, a woman had a stillborn child once. So that's an actual event. That inspired this. The rest of it we made up. But that was a thing.
Yeah, that is. I think
it doesn't sound fun.
No, it does. Like some of these just seem like very like fun spins on very sad things. Like they took the material and really elevated it in a sense.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a lot of, especially TV movies that try to have a supernatural edge that were very influenced by Don't Look Now, the Nicholas Roeg movie, which is just about like parents grieving the loss of a child, like potential supernatural elements. But that's not something I would be like, hey, it's Halloween, let's have fun and watch a movie.
Right, where like, you know, the ghost story is actually grief, like some parents being stricken. That's, yeah.
Yeah. There's an amazing George C. Scott horror movie called, oh my God, I'm forgetting the name. Not The Innocents. The Changeling. I think it's The Changeling. That is from 81 or 82. And that's sort of a haunted lost child horror movie, but it's really creepy and slow and somewhat sad, but is more of just a great sort of gothic horror movie. And that movie does not sound like that.
I think like parenthood, so I have a 1-year-old, like you could play either side, like where losing them is literally your worst fear, something happening to them is your worst fear. And then like on the other side of things, like how horrible things can be sometimes, you know, where like, I mean, trekking to the beach this past weekend, it was like, it was 1,000,000 degrees over hot sand. My son is huge. So I've got a 30-pound, you know, kid on my hip and he poops as soon as we get to the beach. It's
Who doesn't?
Right. So this is sounding more and more like a TV movie, as you can tell. So anyway, you can go either side of the coin and get material out of it.
Oh yeah, it's like, are people afraid of children? Or like, I mean, Pet Sematary is kind of the perfect both of those scenarios.
That's true.
And then Wednesday night, what'd you do? This is the night before Halloween.
Oh. All right, this is another movie I have not seen but need to. A Return to Salem's Lot.
Oh, A Return to Salem's Lot, the sequel.
I saw that there's also a Return to Salem's Cove, and I was thinking, you know, a Return to Salem's Cul-de-sac, a Return to Salem's Quickie Mart, I don't know. But this is incredible. The tagline apparently was Salem's Lot, population dwindling, primary industry terror.
Yes. So have you seen the original Salem's Lot?
I have not, no.
The original is one of the best TV miniseries ever made. It's a 2-night made-for-TV movie, 1979. Tobe Hooper did Texas Chainsaw Massacre, did it. It's really well done. It actually improves on the story quite a bit. It changes a number of things in a really good way. The sequel is absolutely bonkers. So the sequel is made by Larry Cohen, who is a New York sort of independent filmmaker who made the movie The Stuff, the movie God Told Me To. He wrote the movie Phone Booth, like just really weird guy. And so the sequel is sort of the vampires in Salem's Lot don't want to kill people. They're sort of living their life drinking cow blood. Some of them decide they're better than humans and they should take... It's like this weird social movie. Tara Reid is in it. The weirdest thing about it is the main... I guess you'd call him the antagonist because the vampires are kind of the heroes, is played by the director Sam Fuller, who is not an actor. Sam Fuller used to write about crime in Worcester, Mass. For the newspapers. He directed some of the grimmest film noir movies ever, like Shock Corridor, directed the Big Red One, which is like one of the most brutal war movies ever. He's about 5'2". He's about 80 years old in this movie, and he plays a vampire hunter that used to kill Nazis. So he runs around with a Luger and a big cigar, being like, "Goddamn vampires!" And it's not played for laughs, and it's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen.
Holy crap.
It's worth watching. Yeah, Sam Fuller's fascinating. There's a great autobiography he wrote. Like, that guy had a life, and A Return to Salem's Lot's like the least weird thing in it. But good call. That is a fun
Is it another like cold country sort of allegory here? I was thinking like, why name the primary industry in your tagline?
So it sort of is. Yes, because they're this town of vampires who are trying to live like it's almost like they're Amish, like they're trying to live a peaceful life according to their like traditions and not have the outside world bother them, but they need to like modernize if they want to survive, is kind of what the second one's about. The first one is more about that sort of ongoing Stephen King theme of like, can a place be evil? Can a location actually sort of taint, can the ground be soured, and can a place actually, corrupt people, which is a much different kind of angle. But they're both worth watching. I'll say that. I do enjoy Return to Salem's Lot. So you're watching that.
I was wondering, is there a globalization angle or something like?
Oh, that
the
would
terror
be interesting.
industry has fallen on hard times or something, and now they're all voting Republican. And
we can't move terror anymore. It all comes from China.
we're a victim of globalization.
This guy down the street selling terror for half the price I can make it. It's ridiculous. I do want to say also that night, the short-lived show, one of my favorites, Townies, is on. And this starred Molly Ringwald, Eric McCormick, Bill Burr, Jenna Elfman, and I always forget her name. She's the mom in Gilmore Girls. Someone will tell me what it is. I'm sorry, everybody, I forgot. But this was set in Gloucester, Massachusetts. It was basically about these poor young girls, and I mean poor like they had no money, who all waited tables at this kind of shitty diner, and life was hard. And it was like Friends if Friends actually didn't have any money. And it was actually really good. It was a fun show. And this is the Halloween episode, which is pretty fun.
I mean, I have a total usual devotion to Molly Ringwald. I would happily watch that.
I had her on the show. I couldn't. She fascinated me because she is one of those people, totally down to earth, super normal. Seems just like someone's nice mom, but also how there are some people have like that movie star thing that you don't get till you're like near them.
Yeah, the charisma that comes off.
Like you're just like, wow. They're like, you almost physically feel it.
I once saw Drew Barrymore speak at the 92nd Y, and she was giving it off so that it hit you in the back of the auditorium. It was uncanny. Yeah,
it's something you just can't. Obviously, aspects of it come across on screen because that's why they're successful. But when you see those people in person, it's bizarre. Like you feel this thing.
Molly Ringwald now like writes fairly like literary fiction short stories. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. And it was funny. I had a long chat with her about how conflicted she was about how she was sort of John Hughes's muse, and it was weird in hindsight, and how she's just showing her daughters the movies she made with him, but feels odd about them, and like how they don't hold up necessarily, and there's a lot of like not great stuff in them, and how she's sort of coming to terms with that. It was very interesting how sort of knowing she was. And then that same day, her and Skeet Ulrich tried to explain what Gumby was to KJ Apa, who plays Archie on Riverdale.
Holy shit.
And I'll tell you that it's not easy to explain to an 18-year-old Australian kid what Gumby is.
I'm struggling in my mind.
Yeah, we did not.
What finally got you over the line, like got him to see this?
I don't know if we did, to be honest with you. Skeet Ulrich just kept yelling, "I'm Gumby, damn it," from the Eddie Murphy SNL thing, which actually made it less sense. Yeah. Because Gumby's hard to explain at the best of times.
There was like a cowboy angle to the whole thing. I can't. It's been a long time.
Sometimes, I mean, he could go in and out of books, and then when he went in, actually, Edgar Allan Poe is in several episodes of Gumby.
I did not know this, and I would have put it in the book had I.
Gumby goes into some Poe books and deals with Poe.
Holy crap! All this time in like studying Poe and absorbing every bit of Poe media, like you still come across major examples like Gumby.
Yes,
where you just can't believe.
I think there's a Wishbone episode with Poe as well.
That's another one that's new to me.
So Wishbone was a show about a very cute little Jack Russell Terrier who spoke. This is a live action show. And he traveled through time to teach kids about literature. And in the stories, he would play various roles. So like he would be Sherlock Holmes in one. And one of them, he's Dr. Victor Frankenstein. Was he
Poe?
Yeah, I think he might have been Poe, or I'd have to go back and look, but I'm 99% sure there's a Wishbone episode that features Poe. So if you want to see
amazing.
an adorable Jack Russell Terrier playing Edgar Allan Poe.
This is the interpretation I've been waiting for.
Yes, it's the finally an Edgar Allan Poe for the masses.
Put a dog in it, you know.
Oh yeah, make Poe a dog. Everyone loves a dog. Do you remember that musical artist Poe from the 90s?
Vaguely, yeah. Is there a connection there too? There's a band now called Poe, Larkin Poe.
I don't know. Poe wasn't her actual name. Her brother wrote this really ridiculous horror novel called House of Leaves or something that was kind of big with like goth kids pre sort of Twilight.
Yeah.
That was 96 actually. She had her song out. So Thursday night, actual Halloween.
I'm going to be boring. I needed a palate cleanser from all this. So I was watching Great Railway Journeys. Is that horrible? Like, am I 57 under a quilt?
Is this Michael Palin?
It sounded very soothing. So yeah, I would watch that. It was on Channel 57.
Have you ever gone on like a long railway journey, like a sleeping car kind of railway journey?
Yeah, I did that, like backpacking Europe and Asia and whatnot. I love train travel, so I would happily watch hours and hours of any train trip.
It wasn't scary? See, I would find that scary. I don't know why.
What, like the sleeping in bunks on a train or whatever?
Yeah. Just, I don't know why. Being on a train seems scary.
There's a lot of like, being a girl or whatever parts where you're like a little bit more wary than others. But I've never had a bad experience. Maybe that's why. I'd do the Trans-Siberian Railway. I would love to do that.
Or like the Orient Express or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's a gazillion dollars to do it, but someday I hope to.
Because it's basically, it's like traveling in a 5-star hotel, like the Orient Express.
Right. And then, there's a murder and...
Yeah, there's always a murder, and you just hope it's not you. I think that's maybe why I was scared. Great railway journeys. So, would you guys go out and trick-or-treat, or was that kind of forbidden?
Yeah, thankfully, my parents weren't so strict that we couldn't, like, not celebrate Halloween or something. So, but we didn't have a ton of money. We were, middle class-ish. Dad had a corporate job, but there were 7 of us, so that mattered. Anyway, all costumes were homemade. Like, we had somehow acquired like a poncho with a Superman logo on it, and everybody like had a year where they were in the poncho.
You're Superman this year.
Not even realizing how offensive this is until now, but I would be a homeless person for Halloween. That was a costume we could pull off.
That was popular. You just call it a hobo and no one was offended.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can bust out some flannel and some dirt on your face, and that was pretty much the extent of it. We weren't like a crafty family doing this adorably. It was pretty sorry. Did
you have like a whole route where you're like, there's full-size bars at some places, like we got to go fill 2 bags, like...
According to me, like the whole full-size bar thing has never been anything but like a rumor. It's like another Halloween rumor about like Bloody Mary in the mirror. I've never seen it in real life.
I'm here to tell you. Full-size bars are real. There were some neighborhoods that did have them. Not as much as was widely reported, but they do exist.
What did you get and where did you find it?
We had a rich part of town where I grew up that was like all Victorian mansions and and golf courses. And so you would get Charleston chews, which are like the big, huge candies you put in the freezer so you can break your teeth. We would sometimes get like the 3-pack Reese's peanut butter cups.
Holy crap.
And then a few times full-size Snickers. That was pretty good.
Full-size Snickers is an incredible prize.
Would you...
Even up to the time you're like 20.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'd take one now. Would you and your siblings like trade would you have like candy swaps and all that?
Absolutely. Like in my brother's room where multiple brothers slept in there. So it was full of bunk beds, like more than one set. And we would pour out our candy out of our like pillowcase and do our swap meet. The Reese's anything with peanut butter in it was kind of the highest value. I remember a lot of Smarties and, those weird lime Tootsie Rolls that no one wants. There was always a lot of those left over that you're like eating in March.
There's always one.
Need some sugar.
There's always one family member who's like the Good and Plenty kid. Or likes the weird
Good
stuff.
and Plenty's good.
No.
All right, I was that kid, apparently.
You're the one. I want some licorice that looks like medicine. That's my perfect
To this
candy.
day, I do. I still do.
No. Oh, no.
It has a very... It
something.
smells like a cleaner, too.
It does. It's horrific. It's like, if I'm making a 60s anti-drug TV show, here's what the costume designer is going to bring me to represent that medication.
Yeah, totally fair. I feel like this could be like the Dragnet LSD candy that knocks the teenagers over the edge.
Yeah, Blue Boy OD'd on Good and Plenty's. But hey, someone's got to like Good and Plenty, and I applaud you for being that person.
Everyone send yours to me. I will take them in.
Yep, get a P.O. box. We'll just ship Good and Plenty's to you.
Good and Plenty care of.
Yes. So you're watching Train Journeys all night?
Well, I thought I would tune in at 9 o'clock to this, another one I've never seen, Count Dracula. Apparently it was a British interpretation that, like, Dracula in Victorian London sounds promising.
I do want to mention the Great Railway Journeys is actually hosted by Buck Henry, which is actually kind of fascinating. And now I kind of would watch that as well. Buck Henry in Argentina. Let me see. Where's this Dracula thing? Have you seen a bunch of different Draculas? Do you have a favorite?
Not off the top of my head, no. I'm more like I'll tune in and kind of drift in and out of it. It's never been a story that grabbed me, to be honest. Like, and I've read the original, Bram Stoker and whatnot, the first third of which is incredibly scary, at least to me. And then the last 2/3 of which is just very strange stuff about stickers on unconsummated marriage or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, it's very much anti-immigrant. That whole thing. It's like these Europeans are going to spread their plague here and take our women.
Right.
That is an incredibly recent. Yeah, so it's actually Dracula Prince of Darkness from 1966. This is one of the best Dracula adaptations. This is Christopher Lee as Dracula. This is Hammer Films, who were sort of the rival to Universal. They made full color, super gory, especially for the time, horror movies. And Dracula Prince of Darkness is one of the best ones.
I would happily watch that.
The first two Dracula movies they made, one was a vampire movie that wasn't Dracula in it, were great, set in Victorian times. And then they made their last 3 Dracula movies set in like swinging 60s London.
Oh, even better.
They are so awful in the best way. And the last Dracula movie Hammer Pictures made, they were almost out of business. So they partnered with Shaw Brothers Studios, which was a Hong Kong movie studio that made a lot of sort of kung fu movies. And they made a movie called Dracula and the 7 Golden Vampires. And it's a kung fu Dracula movie. And it is unbelievably weird.
It sounds really good. I was thinking it was going in like an Elves direction or something.
Yeah, no, it's something to see. And then there's a Halloween ER.
A very special episode.
It says frights, freaks, tricks and treats. Tonight, Halloween in the ER. On Halloween night, an 8-year-old trick-or-treater and her dad fight for their lives when they're involved in a hit-and-run accident. Meanwhile, Ross and... I didn't see what that... get a jolt of their life on the streets when they... the roving Heathmobile? Oh, Healthmobile. Okay. Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
No, what's the Healthmobile? Was that... I must have missed that season where that was a thing.
I guess they're just like going around giving like healthcare to like homeless people or like people in the streets or kids dressed up like homeless people on Halloween.
That sounds worthy, but not entertaining.
No. Like, okay. Yeah, I'm sure that's terrible. And then Friday night, final night of the week. What'd you do?
Oh, all right. I mentioned this earlier, but it would have to be Flashdance, which now I will watch like anytime I come across it and also put it on. Yeah, I love that movie. I did see, though, Death Warrant, which is a Jean-Claude Van Damme one. I've never seen that, but it looked amazing, like he's in jail and kicking ass there or something.
Yeah,
So
that one is Jean-Claude Van Damme is sent to jail for a crime he didn't commit. An evil warden and has to fight his way out. Flashdance is such a weird movie.
I was just thinking Jean-Claude Van Damme could have played the welder by day, stripper by night. It really almost suited him better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd actually watch that with him playing that role now.
Yeah.
The song Maniac from Flashdance was originally written about the horror movie Maniac. And the producers heard it and had Michael Sembello rewrite the lyrics to be about a dancer. Which is why that song is creepy.
You almost can sense something strange about it. Like there's this backstory. It explains a lot.
Yeah, because it doesn't make any, like, she works as a steel worker and then loves dancing. She's a maniac. Like, that doesn't make sense. But a guy who scalps people and puts their heads on mannequins in New York, yeah, that's a maniac.
Yeah, fair enough. You don't wonder then.
Yeah. And he didn't do any dancing in that movie. That movie, again, huge phenomenon, and I think people who've never seen it even know Flashdance, or at least know, like, the pull the thing down. Yeah, like, they know the cliches of it.
We're on Zoom, and I just did the gesture of pulling down the bucket of water. So
people knew, but they knew right away.
Yeah, everybody else was doing it, too, in the privacy of their own homes.
Yeah,
so.
it's strange that, I don't know if it was because it was sort of pre-internet age or whatever, that those images of a movie like that still come through and no one remembers Backdraft. But
this one is, what's the Irene Cara song in it?
Oh, not Works Hard for
What a Feeling?
What a Feeling, yeah.
Yeah, that is I think that's just an objectively great song. And I have listened to it, put it on in key moments of my own life, like when I was celebrating something.
Oh yeah, the soundtrack's great. That again was one of those first, like, pop music soundtrack movies that the soundtrack was just as popular, if not more popular than the movie.
Yeah.
But Jennifer Beals, who stars in that movie, I'm pleased with myself for this. This ties everything back together. Jennifer Beals, 1985, stars in a remake of Frankenstein called The Bride. And do you know who plays Victor Frankenstein in this film?
No.
Sting.
It comes out like stinging fields of gold.
Yeah, Sting features Sting as Victor Frankenstein.
I really admire the way you tied that off.
It's all connected.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Pretty good movie, actually, too. Clancy Brown plays the Frankenstein monster, and he's really, really good. It's more like the book. But yeah,
Is
Jennifer
Sting
Beals.
a good actor?
Sting is Sting all the time. Like, if he's cast right, he's good. But although I can't think of a thing he's been cast wrong in, maybe Dune. Maybe Dune wasn't right for him. But there you go. So that is the week. But as you know, TV Guide, it is not just informative. It has opinions and it cheers and it jeers. And I would like to read you the cheers and jeers of this week, Halloween 1996, to wrap up and see if you agree or disagree.
Okay.
So this is a split week. We got 2 cheers, 2 jeers. I'll start with the cheers. Let me zoom in here. Where are we here? I lost it. There we go. Cheers to fast autos and dolls who drive. Who needs actors when, as current Nissan ad proves, G.I. Joes and Barbies can whet consumers' cravings just as powerfully. In this super cool spot, a stud muffin boy toy spins over to pick up his high-fashion doll face as a Van Halen cover of The Kinks' You Really Got Me helps him put the pedal to the metal. An all-too-perfect Ken clone mopes as the erotic auto tryst leaves him in the dust. Their greed, their materialism, their very skin. The trio are so plastic that we're not sure what the commercial creators are actually saying about what real people who would want to buy this car are like. Let's not think too hard about that, though. No, instead, let's imagine what happens next in this Madison Ave Toy Story. We'll see Midge just around the bend, complicating the scenario. What?
Are these pieces bylined? Who's writing this?
No.
It sounds like...
That's the thing. They were totally anonymous, so they would be weird, bitchy, and just strange.
Yeah, and the writing, like, someone has aspirations beyond whatever $3 a word they're getting for a TV guide.
Yeah, and they flip-flop a lot in this. They're like, this is great. No, it isn't. Who cares?
Erotic auto tryst.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly wanted to write autoerotic. Jeers to changing one's spots. Over the past few years, Roseanne has undergone a bewildering evolution from an iconoclastic, bracingly realistic blue-collar sitcom to an outlandish and indulgent farce. We trace the problem back to the 1991-92 season when the Connors visited Las Vegas for a cameo by Wayne Newton. Since then, Roseanne has increasingly grown starstruck and silly, parading a raft of extraneous celebrities from Morgan Fairchild to Blues Traveler to Jerry Springer. This season, when the Connors won $108 million lottery jackpot, the once proud flagship of the working class has gone completely La La Land, a disjointed, high camp, vanity production for its namesake. Roseanne has tried to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear and ended up with a grotesque hybrid.
Okay. But honestly, that sounds like praise to me, like the disjointed high camp vanity production. I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah, it does make it sound interesting, but I agree with the substance of that. But yeah, they make it way too impressive.
Yeah.
Cheers to Johnny Carson's quiet act of kindness. We don't hear much from the retired talk show titan, but he has been practicing his noblesse obligation without fanfare. Just ask Faye Gordon, a grade school teacher whose 100th birthday party was made all the more memorable by a surprise visit from her most famous pupil. Or ask the family of the late game show host Ray Combs, who hanged himself, who received an unexpected gift of $25,000 from the Tonight Show host after Combs' suicide this summer. An intensely private man, Carson couldn't avoid the publicity his generosity inevitably generated, but he certainly didn't seek it. In fact, much to the frustration of the mic-wielding imitators he's left behind, the king of the chat circuit refused to talk about being Mr. Nice Guy at all.
I feel like his publicist probably cooked this up, by placing a call. I know that's horrible to assume, but...
No, I agree with you. It's all like, oh, don't take my picture. No.
Yes.
Yeah, it's, because no one... Like, I don't think Ray Combs' family's telling everybody that he gave them money.
No, I don't think they're probably holding a press conference about this one. So,
and like a 100-year-old lady's gonna talk?
Yeah, I don't think she can use a telephone.
Like, can you imagine some 100-year-old lady's gonna be like, Johnny Carson visited me? And people are gonna be like, all right, lady, okay.
Yeah, these are... it's so symptomatic of, like... It seems like in this era of TV Guide, like they were able to get away with it so much more. This is written to such a credulous audience. It's unreal to me.
Yeah.
Like now you can't roast them on Twitter, so they're just getting away with shit left and right where you're like, this obviously is false.
But it makes you wish that we could have written for this then, doesn't it?
I think I will never see a rate like this guy is getting.
Oh, I'm sure. This guy probably was making a ridiculous amount of money to just be bitchy and writing just press releases under the guise of these stories. Finally, jeers to jokes that are light years old. The writers on NBC sitcoms seem to be obsessed with Star Wars. One episode of Friends was built around sexual fantasies about Princess Leia, a little too kinky, not to mention scary, for us. A few weeks later on Suddenly Susan, a suitor uses a strange pickup line on Brooke Shields. Say there, you're as tall as a Wookiee, aren't you? Last season on News Radio, Joe, played by Joe Rogan, who never went on to do anything else, disclosed his good luck charm, a figurine of Boba Fett, the intergalactic bounty hunter. A Boba Fett fetish? Gee, guys, even though a major re-release of the trilogy is planned for 1997, the force of these references can only stay with us so long.
Well, obviously the judgment here is sound. No one's heard of Star Wars since...
Nope. Just faded away.
I didn't even get the Force joke. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think it must be Force MDs who did Tender Love in the movie Crush Groove, I think is what he's referencing here.
Right.
I love how wrong that is.
Seriously, it makes you want to call them.
The whole thing is like, shut up, nerds. Oh, man. Although I kind of agree with him. I do hate that as well.
Dude, I hate hearing about it, honestly.
I'm not a Star Wars fan.
No, me either.
Is there anything you've been watching in lockdown or any comfort shows or shows you missed growing up that you've gone back and revisited?
I'm going to sound so basic, right? I rewatched The Office as a comfort show because,
That's fine.
I mean, everybody else in America does, but just because it's from a pre-2016 era, which makes it like absolutely gaga in its innocence.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's still plausible enough because I was temping during the years it was on. So a lot of that experience, obviously my experience was even darker than the show. If they actually portrayed what that life is like, then no one would put it on television. Yeah, so that's when I fall asleep too regularly. But mostly my life right now is rewatching Zootopia and Moana because of a baby.
And then when you're kids too, you can show them Return to Salem's Lot.
Yeah, that's the natural next step, in the queue, and we'll put it on the Disney watch list so we can call it up all the time.
Exactly. The kid loves it. He won't stop watching. The kid loves Sam Fuller.
He's singing all the songs. He wants diapers with the vampires on them, Return to Salem's Lot sheets and
Tickle Me Sam Fuller's the biggest toy this Christmas. Those kids want that toy. Oh, man. Well, thank you so much for doing this. It's been great talking to you.
It's been super fun. I can't believe how much I recall of this TV guide. Like, I'm sure that I remember this cover when I saw it. It was very much like a time capsule moment from my childhood. And I even wondered, like, the fact that I recall so many of these ads and, like, the shows, like, is this why I didn't do that great on the SAT?
Oh, yeah.
Because my mind is just all old TV guides, and I never would have gotten there without this exercise.
Well, this has been a big breakthrough, and I do take insurance.
Excellent. What's your copay?
There you go. That's Kat. Get her book. It is called Poe for Your Problems, Uncommon Advice from History's Least Likely Self-Help Guru. It is a must-buy. You will enjoy it very much. Buy it and give it out as Halloween gifts to everyone you know. You probably don't give out Halloween gifts, but maybe you should do that. It's a new thing. We'll do that this year. Halloween gifts. If you want to email me, please do so at tvguidancecounselor@gmail.com or ken@icanread.com. Let me know what your Halloween plans are this year, what you're going to be watching, any recommendations for candy, anything like that. If you found monster cereals, they were a little difficult to find. If you have guests you'd like to hear on the show, anything like that, just let me know how you're doing. Anything, really. Love hearing from you guys. Thanks again to the patrons, patreon.com/tvguidancecounselor. It is impossible to do the show without you, and I cannot thank you enough. And I'll thank you again next week when I'm here for a brand new edition of TV Guidance Counselor.
That just ups the terror level.
It's so...
But she's also a tree.
She's also a tree.